Formula One has formally approved Cadillac's entry for the 2026 season. The move supersedes a deal in principle that was reached between F1 and General Motors last November, but it now ratifies Cadillac's slot on the grid as an 11th team in Formula One for 2026. How exciting is this? I mean, how important do you think this news is in wider terms? Nick, if I ask you first, coming from your background, what sort of how's this going to echo around other paddocks?
I mean, absolutely. It's a huge deal to have Cadillac in Formula One, to have a true American brand like that in Formula One. I know we already have Haas F1, but it's not Cadillac. It's not General Motors. And I also think they really needed this to happen after all the drama with Andretti that left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. So if they didn't have any American team, that would have just made people a bit more upset than they already were. So I think having Cadillac, allowing the grid to expand to that is really big for Formula One, and it's big for Americans too, because most everybody else, they have somebody to root for. They have the home team. We don't have much of a home team in Formula Ones, but Cadillac, General Motors, it's something everybody can get behind.
Laitta, is that what you're thinking as well? Now I know you're a big fan of sports cars. Do you think that will, being in F1, it will resonate with sports cars fans?
I mean, I absolutely do. It's an example I like to utilize a lot because there's an interesting combo or like crossroads that I've seen over the last, I want to say even decade. But one of the things for the US sports car especially, is that people who are Formula One fans would come to the sports car races and typically don their F1 attire because F1 wasn't a huge presence in the US, say, a decade ago. So that was kind of like if you were in America, you would go and watch a sports car race, root for your teams that kind of correlate with who you have on the F1 grid. To be able to have, like Nick was saying, like that home team is a huge deal. I mean, I know we've got Ford is partnering with Red Bull, and that's already been news. And you can already see the hype on the Cadillac side of things because granted it was a principal deal, but everybody kind of
Hmm.
just ran with it and with it's basically everybody just assumed it's already the 11th team without it being officially confirmed. And you see how excited people are to have a US brand being represented. And the nice thing too is that Cadillac seems to be really taking it seriously in the sense of like opening the door to the talent that we have over here in the US and trying to get an American driver in the seat. I know we've had a lot of stories talking about Colton Herta, and I may be getting ahead of us in this conversation, but there is a lot of talent, and I've seen the interviews where they discuss like, oh, like Steiner had pointed out in an interview recently about like, oh, well, there just wasn't really talent in the US to work with to put in the Haas team, for instance, which I'd like to outright, argue against because there has been that talent. It's just a matter of the point systems and things have made it really complicated to have someone on the American side from an IndyCar, NASCAR, sports car side be able to have that opportunity to go across and really compete. So I think that this will open the doors too for those opportunities for American drivers that we haven't really seen in a really long time.
Yeah, Nick, you're nodding your head, so obviously you agree. I mean, can you see this switching of codes? Will there be other drivers that will be looking to perhaps get into Formula One and maybe leave IndyCar and NASCAR now that you've got this massive deal with Cadillac?
Yeah, on the NASCAR side, I don't really see anyone that's looking in that direction because it's just so different. There's a lot bigger bridge between NASCAR and Formula One than there is between IndyCar and F1. But on the IndyCar side, absolutely. And I think Colton Herta has to be top of mind of that just because he's wanted to do it before. Other teams have been interested in him before. And I think Colton Herta would be perfect because he's got a big following. People love him. He's all American. Joseph Newgarden is another guy that I would love to see in Formula One, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's really interested in that, and he's probably got a few more Indy 500s he wants to win. So I think Herta's the guy that we got to be looking to.
Yeah, I mean he's
Well,
the name on everyone's lips, isn't he? And I know that he recently played it down. But Lolita, go on. What was you going to say then?
Oh, what I was going to say is I think the biggest challenge at this point is going to be can you pull an American away from, say, like IndyCar to do Formula One? Because the competition in IndyCar is so good. And with all the advancements, and there's a lot of development that I can kind of tease right now. We'll be having some stories about what's going on with the car and the racing here in the next couple of weeks on that side. There's a lot of developments going on behind the scenes in IndyCar. So there's a lot to be excited for open wheel racing just here in the US. And a lot of the drivers that come here do find that the IndyCar competition is a little bit more
Mm.
exciting than, say, F1. So I think the F1's biggest challenge is if you do want to bring more of the American talent in, which I'm not sure, it doesn't seem like it's a big conversation, but I feel like Cadillac is interested in making that a conversation, is how are you pulling these drivers away from exciting series already, like to
Yeah.
actually draw that talent across
Yeah,
overseas?
that's a fair point because from a Formula One perspective, it's the assumption that everyone wants to be in Formula One. Certainly that is widely held within Europe. Why go anywhere else? But of course, you mentioned the fact that it is so competitive and there's so much, you know, momentum behind that championship. And obviously the people in IndyCar are now talking about, not catching up with Formula One, but overtaking Formula One globally. And of course, there's big ambitions there. So, it's definitely not a given that, an American driver would necessarily want to come into Formula One. One thing I wanted to touch on was what will Cadillac General Motors bring to the championship. Obviously, they had their initial proposal, which was rejected. Embarrassingly so, I thought it was pretty damning, the initial application. And F1 said that there was no added value from the bid, which seemed nasty and totally brutal. But what will they actually bring? Now I know it's been approved and they're going to bring in the engine and what else are they going to bring to the table? Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I wish I had a magic 8 ball, but looking at it, I think Formula One, they did themselves no favors there. If you're trying to get goodwill in the United States, disparaging brand like Cadillac and GM and a name like Andretti, it's not a good way to do it. But I think now that they're going to be in Formula One, I think because of this saga, they're even more motivated than before to prove them wrong, which I think really adds something to it. It's going to make people even more passionate about the entry. And I think they're going to capitalize on that. They're really going to push the fact that we are the American team and we are taking on the European teams and we're going to show them that we Americans know what we're doing. And I think it's not dissimilar to the attitude like somebody like Carroll Shelby had when he's like, I'm going to go to Le Mans. I'm going to show
Yeah.
Ferrari what America can do here with a Ford. And I think that's the same attitude Cadillac's going to be bringing to Formula One.
Do you agree, Lily? You are nodding. I would
Yeah,
love to see that.
it's putting for me, I feel like, it's putting a scrappy contestant into everything. And to be fair, like I know that a lot of F1 has always been a very Eurocentric series. And so like everybody's used to seeing the brands that are there. And there was similar resistance when Honda wanted to be a part of it, when Toyota at some point, if I remember correctly, wanted to be a part of it. Like new is scary. And I
Hmm.
understand that. But the Americans, we do have an interesting mentality to how we approach our work and how we want to be in racing. And we are, granted, there's been a lot of history in Europe for racing, but there's been a lot of it here in the
Mm.
US being,
Mm.
the home of the automotive industry and being able to take one of our quote unquote big three team, like manufacturers into that series is a big deal for the US. And so it's being able to say that we are able to compete and that if we really truly want to make F1 this global brand that everybody keeps saying is what it is, like we need to be able to represent globally, which means also including an American team. And it's unfortunate the resistance that there was, especially with having an Andretti name behind it. And I know everybody has their reasons behind that, but the fact that they still were able to at least bring Cadillac on, I think is a really good step in that direction, especially if that's, you know, that if you want American fans, you need to bring in some of our American
Yeah,
lifestyle into it. So
and I think that this is where there was a massively missed opportunity with Haas. When Haas came in, I remember being really excited the fact it was an American team, and they turned up at pre-season testing with a grey car. And I remember talking to people in the team saying, surely this isn't, your final design, and they were, no, this is it. We want to be grey. We want to blend in. It was against everything that I was hoping. I wanted to see red, white, and blue on the car.
Later, which didn't help.
Incredible. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that. No, it didn't. But just not leaning on that heritage and that identity, I thought was a missed opportunity, and one which I'm really hopeful that GM Caddy actually do. I know that it's going to be based at Silverstone in UK, but I kind of get that makes sense because all the brain drain is
everything is there.
Is focused, isn't it, in the UK? That makes sense. But I'm hugely optimistic behind this project. The benefit is that they're not running this year, so they can focus. They're not bound by F1's cost cap rules, and they can develop a car now over the next 12 months, ready for 2026 and the start of the new season. So I don't know about you, but I just think this is all perfectly timed, and I just hope that it's not a missed opportunity.
As long as they don't
I will say to brace yourself. Oh, sorry, Nick.
Go on, Nick. What was you going to say?
I was saying, as long as they don't show up with a gray car. I mean, you look at what Trackhouse just did in MotoGP. They understood the assignment. They showed up when they debuted their two bikes, and they were wrapped in an American flag. And that's how you got to do it. If you want to appeal to the American fan base, it may seem a little gaudy to people in Europe and elsewhere, but people eat that up in America. They love it. They want to see the American pride. And I think Cadillac is going to lean into it, which I think is just going to make people more enthusiastic.
Awesome.
Well, you have to, though, think about Cadillac and just what they are as a brand right now, though, where they've been going a little bit more in the direction and to go to the manufacturer side just for a brief second. Like, they've been going on the more luxury end. I mean, they've got the lyric where or not the lyric. I cannot think I cannot think of the car right now, but basically they're hand building it and it's like a $300,000 car. So there is a little bit, there may be not as much flash as we might want. It all depends on how, if they really want to take that luxury brand and try to match Mercedes energy, or if they really want to be like, you know what, we're American, let's do this. So
Yeah.
I would say don't get your hopes up too high that they're going to go super awesome, like American flag across the side of it. You could hope that that might be the case, but understanding Cadillac's branding as of right now, it's a little bit more luxury refined. So it might not be gray, but like, don't be surprised if it's like, black or gold or something. Like, I hope they step it up a little bit because they have some cool colors on their cars, but I'm just like, I don't know if flashy is Cadillac right now. So we can be surprised, but
yeah. Well, look, so long as it is a surprise, then that's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks ever so much, both, for your time and the reaction to this. Nick, Laitta, thanks ever so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ben.